Hi guys, hope you're all doing well. I've been trying to make this vid for a couple weeks now, but what I've been noticing is that my understanding, my internal grasp of reality and the situation that we're in with this society has never been more clear. But what I've been noticing is that my ability to express it to others is more difficult. And I think that kind of makes sense because the closer you get to the core reality and the core manipulation that we're all being exposed to, the harder it is going to be to verbalize to other people. But I'm going to try my best right here. And I do have a long list of all the different things that I wanted to cover, but I'm not really going to go down that road today. I may touch on some of this stuff briefly as I'm going through this, but what I would like to do is just start from where I believe the fall into delusion has occurred. And I mean, my personal opinion is that the true purpose of our human conscious existence that we're currently having is for each of us individually to come to a rational understanding of the reality that we're existing in and our purpose in it. To me, that is our true purpose here. And the goal from a very young age from many different institutions is to take you away from that true journey that we're all is our birth point of our whole existence here, to come to our own understanding of this reality and find our own way in it. That's totally purposely been pushed off the plate. And what has been exchanged with it is that you're just supposed to be an obedient, dependent button pusher that has no idea how to survive in the natural world without being dominated by these appointed authority figures. And it's one of the problems. It comes down to the modern version of it. The reason it's happening is because it comes down to two things. One of them is the compulsory school system that was implemented in around 1850, and the second one is the modern religions. And they both want you to turn your rational journey to try and understand this very complex reality that we exist in. They want that to be turned off at a very young age, and they don't want it turned back on again. And that is why so many people are living in this fantasy delusion that has been created for them since about, I would say, after the Civil War. It is when it went into full force. And it started with the compulsory schooling. And one thing people need to understand is that the compulsory schooling in the United States was taken from the Prussian model. And what happened was, in Prussia in the early 1800s, Napoleon came in and completely just dominated the Prussian army and wiped the map with them. And after that happened, the Prussian state decided that the reason that they were so easily defeated was because the soldiers weren't obedient enough, and that if they could just make more obedient soldiers, then this wouldn't happen again. So what they did is they implemented a compulsory schooling system that's main focus of the system above anything else was to get children from the earliest age possible to just blindly follow appointed authority figures. And then secondarily to that, to train them to fulfill the needs of the military and these industrialists that were just coming into play. And that was later then picked up by the American government, the American states, and they implemented the Prussian model in around from the 1850s on. It was started to be implemented, and with the same goals in mind. They just wanted children that were obedient to appointed authority figures, no matter who they were. As long as there was somebody that was saying this person's in charge of you, then there would be people to follow that person's orders. And that's what this whole system's built on. And that is why we're in the situation we're in today, is because children from pretty much from birth, because their parents are actually part of the problem, they've been taught that, because a lot of these parents encourage their kids to be obedient button pushers. And they think that there's some sort of value in it because that's what they were trained to do from the time they were 4 years old, or however old they were when the indoctrination started. But what they didn't want was children to use their own rational thinking to come to their own understanding of their own purpose in this reality. That's what they didn't want. And so that's why we're in the situation we're in. And it's kind of why I blame the American middle class for a lot of the problems that we have now. And it's not totally their fault, but they, at this point of the game, it's 99% their fault, because what's happened is a lot of them now see that we're being run by a fully criminal government that's corrupt on every single level. And because they don't have any other way to survive but following these parasites' orders and pushing the buttons for them, they're going to fight to remain these dependent button pushers until they die. And not only are they going to fight so that they can remain dependent button pushers for 65 years of their life, but they're going to fight so that you can't have any success unless you also become these people's dependent button pushers. And that's the main problem that we have right now. And the like I said, the big problem is that people are so far, they've been manipulated for so many generations now, that to actually look at reality for what it is would uproot their whole existence and their lives in so many ways that they just can't do it. So instead, what they do is they latch on to political parties and fully controlled AstroTurf movements like Q or the Proud Boys or Antifa or BLM. And there's about 1,000 other groups too that are fully controlled, but I'll get into that in a bit. But that's the main issue that we're facing right now, is that from birth, children have been trained that to not use any rational thought to come to their own rational understanding of their own purpose in this reality. And instead, they're going to believe in the Bible or the Constitution or the flag or all the other things that they've been trained to replace their own rational thinking with. And I'm, like I've said before, I believe in God. I don't have a problem with religion in general. I have a problem with most of the modern religions in certain aspects. I think that they most of them try and get you to follow good values, but while they're getting you to follow good values, they also train you to turn off all your rational thinking. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that with the modern religions, is that they encourage everyone who believes in them from a very early age to not figure out any of this complex reality for themselves. Instead, they're just going to read these books written by other men so many years ago and not contemplate anything rational for themselves. And once you have somebody turn their rational thinking off at 4 or 5 years old, they're pretty much doomed. I mean, they may be able to make it through life in this system by following the orders of appointed authority figures and pushing the right buttons the right way and following the right papers the right way and taking the blood pressure the right way. But their connection to the natural world and the core of reality is completely missing. And most of a large percentage of the American middle class is going to die without having any clue of the nature of reality. That was the whole point of their life. And that is the core problem with society at this point. So that's all I want to talk about for that. The next thing I want to talk about is the fake patriotism and the flag retards. And the first thing I want to say is that I don't have any problems with people being proud of their heritage or where they came from or where they live. I think that's a perfectly natural thing to do. But the problem comes in, and it gets back to compulsory schooling as well, because the problem comes in is when you have a fully corrupt criminal government and the only thing that the American middle class is willing to do to fix it is wave their flag, because the only thing they know how to do is wave flags, push buttons, and follow the order of appointed authority figures. So that's my main problem with the fake patriotism and the flag wavers, is that there's no amount of corruption. But let's put it this way. If the founding fathers were alive right now, rest assured, the last thing they would be doing would be pasting American flags all over every single thing that they could find. It's just so nonsensical how, and it's kind of like the flag wavers it's the same weakness as the pigs that call themselves heroes. It's like they've been ingrained from birth that the flag represents this fantasy utopia that doesn't exist. And no matter how bad things get, no matter how corrupt things are, as long as they can push their buttons for their masters, that the waving the flag is all that they're going to know how to do to fix things, because that's all they've been trained. And just the whole thing is just ridiculous. The flag and the Constitution, and that's the other thing too, these people that worship the Constitution. The Constitution, your rights are God-given, inalienable rights. And I mean, honestly, if you want to pledge allegiance to anything, then they should have been, and this is how you know that it's a manipulative spell that is cast on children. If they really were interested in maintaining freedom, what these children would be pledging allegiance to would be the Bill of Rights and the freedoms that they uphold. Not the flag or some inanimate, or the United States of America. They would be pledging allegiance to things that have a moral value to them, which they don't. They wanted to keep all that out of the pledge of servitude, the spell of servitude, because they don't want people thinking about the freedoms that they're supposed to have. Because think about it, if every time people had to say the Pledge of Allegiance, they had to pledge allegiance to all the bills in the Bill of Rights, they would realize real soon that the Constitution was a waste. I won't say it was a total waste, but the Constitution, if you look at it now, was totally ineffective at securing anything at all. Because, I mean, pretty much the founding fathers would not want any parts of this current system. I mean, we have a standing army. The police are the standing army that was warned about in the Constitution. And it's just people, that's why they wanted to keep everything around the flag and these spell casting, what's the word I'm looking for? Talismans. Because it doesn't have any moral, meaningful value to it. You just wave it, and it's a signal of your success. You can be, and it's very interesting because, I'll drive through poor neighborhoods of near my area. There's poor areas, and it doesn't fail. It doesn't matter how poor somebody is, they'll still put a flag out in front of their house. It's truly hilarious. I'm surprised they don't have flags hanging on Kensington Avenue. They probably do, for all I know. So that's all I wanted to say about that, because I don't have a problem with patriotism, but what I have a problem with is when weak-minded people allow themselves to latch on to magic talismans that control their thoughts and are willing to accept any amount of corruption and immorality in order so that they don't have to change their own way of life. And I mean, that's where we are. And I mean, that's kind of why I have a problem. I blame the middle class before I blame the WEF or the Gates Foundation or even the politicians even. I mean, they're pretty bad as well. But I mean, until the population is willing to look at the situation for what it is and stop falling into the weakest, easiest solution, then things are never going to improve. These people will be waving their flags as there is a firing squad shooting them. I mean, that's literally what it seems like. I mean, like I said, I don't have a problem with patriotism, but just make sure you have something that you to be patriotic about, and don't be patriotic until you have that. That's all I want to say about the patriotism. So the next thing I want to talk about is the severe psychological manipulation that is going on with the population. And I mean, it's gotten basically since 9/11, the propaganda that is being put on the American population is so sophisticated and so deep that there's really very, very minimal people that aren't going to fall victim to one aspect of it. And I'm just going to go through a few things that they've been doing lately that I find very interesting. And the one way you can tell when you're hitting a nerve with these people, I don't even want to call them people, these scumbags that want to control every aspect of our lives. One way you could tell you hit a nerve with them is when they delete your comments on YouTube, because that says that you had said something that they did not want other people to see. And I'm just going to show you one example of this. But what they're doing is that the True Stream Media had made this video the other day. It was about the gun ban that they pretended to do. And I'm going to try and explain this real simple to you. One way to know if you're being mentally manipulated is that when a policy is made and one group of people gets all pissed off because of the policy, but in reality, nothing has actually changed. And that's the new thing they've been doing. There's this video they did about this, and I made this comment from my other channel that I have, this 33, Hermes Trismegistus 33. And I pretty much said, this is social engineering scheme. This creature is following orders. The reaction was the goal. This is all in lead up to the greatest show on earth we are about to witness with the next selection. They got to pre-radicalize all their demographics before the circus. Get ready for a show like you've never seen. And they let that one pass. which I was really, really, really surprised that they let that one go. But they did. But if you come down further here, somebody else had responded to me right here, this guy here, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And that's basically problem, reaction, solution. But so I responded to it, but you can see the response isn't shown here. And the reason it's not shown is because it's censored. So if I hit newest first, and I think this is very telling as to what they don't want people to understand. Because when they censor comments like this, they're letting you know what they don't want other people to know. And this one was censored too, but this isn't the one I'm talking about. But the one I'm talking about was the reply to it's this one here. This is what they censored. And this is what they really, really don't want the tax cattle to know. And I'm responding to this one here, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And I said, or in its current form, policy, reaction, solution. That's the new game being played. They just started pretty much since the pandemic. But what they're doing, they make policy they know will radicalize a certain demographic of the population, then use that demographic that they just radicalized with their policy as pawns in their political charade. They started with the public school curriculum, then it went to Roe v. Wade, now they're doing it with the gun shit. It's all, what these people are doing. Everybody has willingly categorized themselves into these tight, narrow points of view that have basically just been handed to them by their parents and society over the years over the past few generations. Because, I mean, the whole left and right, Republican, Democrat thing, that wasn't always the case. That's a more recent occurrence of how they control the minds of the population. Because if they can fit everybody and force everybody into these two groups, and then each one of these two groups has certain characteristics that they rigidly stick to, like the left wants abortions, the right wants their guns, the left wants to have trans everything, the right wants to kill all the trans people. If they can force people into these very narrow fields of view, this is all they have to do right here to get people to participate in their political charade. And this has been going on for a while, but what they're doing now is they didn't always, the reason they can do it with just making policy now is because the elections no longer matter. So they can just make policy that pisses people off, and then that they weren't able to do that before because the people making the policy wouldn't get reelected. But what's happened now is that no matter who you elect, no matter who is elected on either side, they're the same corporations and state interests that are funding every single agenda that you are being presented with from the government is being funded into existence by corporations and state interests. So now it doesn't matter. The reason that they could just make policy is because they don't care about the votes anymore. So it leaves them open to just make policy that pisses off large demographics of the population because there's no recourse for the population. So they'll just make some more different policy that pisses off different people. And that's all that's what they've been doing since pretty much around the pandemic. They make policy that they know is going to piss a certain demographic off. And then they use that demographic as pawns in their political charade. And that is one of the biggest ways that the population's reality is being manipulated right now by these people, by so many people just placing themselves in these very narrow viewpoints. And I mean, it's pretty funny to see because, basically, I've seen people change their own views of what they believe about something based on what the media tells them that the left or the right represent. So like I have people in my life that have had certain beliefs, right? And then as soon as the media, like as soon as it shifted a little bit, like from left to right with like the masks and stuff like that and going along with the pretendemic, I've watched people completely change their own view based on what the media told them about the group that they've placed themselves in. I mean, it's just real. This whole population, we're in a really bad spot because the population is really, I mean, they have no idea how they've been manipulated for generations. And part of the problem is that people don't want to admit to themselves that they've been enslaved basically their whole life. They feel like because they have some sort of comfortable lifestyle that they can't really look in, they don't want to look at reality because it may lead them to believe that even though that they can pay for their food and their shelter, that they may have still been taken for a ride by people for generations and they've been forced to live in this very narrow band of existence that's been presented to them. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that, is that just understand that the government is purposely making policy that is meant to radicalize a certain demographic of the population. That's the only reason it's being made. And the other thing that they're doing is that and I want to touch on this kind of deals with the same topic with the trans and the whole woke thing. What people don't like, I've had people say to me, like, because I've said on other vids where Antifa and BLM are fully controlled AstroTurf groups, and I've had people say, oh no, I know people that are in those groups, and Q is the same thing, and they're people that are, no, they're real groups, I'm in that group, or something to that effect. And what people don't understand, like, is that you may be, and this goes even back to the fake insurrection as well. Just because you think you're in a legitimate group, don't mean that you're in a legitimate group. All of these groups that are being presented to the population, Proud Boys, all the right-wing groups, at their leadership, they're controlled by intelligence. And I mean, even as some of the gangs that are out there, the street gangs at their leadership are controlled by intelligence. Now, 99% of the people in the gangs don't understand that, but it's the case that there's intelligence agencies that are calling the shots for, not all of them, but for some of these street gangs, and pretty much all of the social groups that you're seeing, like Antifa, BLM, Proud Boys, those type of groups are all controlled at the top by intelligence. And the way that you can tell, one of the ways you can tell anyway, is that when you notice when they had the Floyd thing, did you see how quick these groups came out of nowhere? And did you see how quick those groups disappeared back into nowhere? That doesn't happen naturally. That only happens because there's somebody funding an agenda into existence. And that's one thing you really have to understand. Just because there may be some people that affiliate themselves with these groups, like I had family members that actually bought into the Q nonsense, and that was totally intelligence controlled nonsense from day one. And people don't understand how their whole reality is manipulated by social engineers. And it's gone on, and people are so far gone that the truth would upset too much of their life at this point. And that's why, and I mean, it's pretty much the American middle class is a big part of the problem. That's why I don't like to blame like the World Economic Forum and all these other types of organizations, because they're actually only a very, very, very small part of the problem. The much larger problem are all these button pushers that have been forced into this very narrow band of existence. And these people, these button pushers, they are going to do everything in their power to ensure that not only they have to remain button pushers for the rest of their life, but that you, person that wants to be like a self-sustaining person, that you can have your own freedom. And that's going to get into the next person that I want to talk about. Before I start the next part, I want you to just listen. I've already posted this. You can watch the whole vid on my channel, but I want you to listen to this. And this is what a true freedom-loving psychologist should sound like. And then after you listen to what he says, I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to play the first bit. But after you listen to what he says, I want you to listen to what scum of the earth psychologists that have been dominated their whole life sound like.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to receive this award tonight, named for my dear friend and colleague, Thomas Szasz. As Thomas Szasz wrote years ago, the only true political virtue is obedience to authority, and the only true political sin is independence.
That's all I want you to hear. They are some of the truest words that you will ever hear. Just think about what he just said. I'm going to play it one more time just so you can hear it, because just think about what he's saying here. It's so true.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to receive this award tonight, named for my dear friend and colleague, Thomas Szasz. As Thomas Szasz wrote years ago, the only true political virtue is obedience to authority, and the only true political sin is independence. Independence renders authority useless, and that is what infuriates it so.
And that's also why they want you so dependent. Okay, so I'll go on to the next part because it's kind of relevant to this. I think there's one more thing I want to post before I put the next part on, because I bring it up in the next part, and I think this is relevant as well. This is Thomas Oz. This was the award that the other guy was being given, but Thomas Oz is, just listen to what he says.
So when school authorities tell a mother, as you already heard, that her son is sick and needs to be on drugs, how in the world is she to know that that is simply a lie? How is she to recognize that what experts now call attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is simply not a disease? Now, such a mother is not an expert in the history of psychiatry. She does not know that psychiatrists have, for hundreds of years, used diagnostic terms, so-called diagnostic terms, to stigmatize and control people. I will only give you a few dramatic examples. When black slaves in the South ran away to freedom, it wasn't that they wanted to be free. They suffered from a disease called drapetomania. From drapetes, runaway slave, and mania. I'm not making this up. This was a legitimate diagnosis, just like attention deficit disorder is. Women, half the population of mankind, of course, if they were foolish enough to rebel against domination by men, well, then they had a serious disease called hysteria, which was due to their wandering womb. Now, none of those behaviors was ever a disease, and of course it's not a disease. But nor is attention deficit disorder a disease. No behavior or misbehavior is a disease or can be a disease. That's not what diseases are.
I'll stop it there. You guys can watch the rest if you want, but just listen to did you hear what he said there about drapetomania and about slaves running away to be free, were diagnosed with mental illness Well, that'll get into the next scum of the earth scumbag that I want to cover. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is there's two very small minority groups that really only make up about 5% of the population on either side. So you have the woke side, right? And that whole thing is being, what's happening is that they're using a very small number of woke people, and then they're using their policy, they're making policy that is meant to piss off the other 95% of the population. And the other thing they're doing, the woke and the trans people, they're not the only ones that they're doing this to. There's a whole other, the opposite end of the spectrum that from the woke and the trans people are the people like Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson here. And these people don't understand that there's tons of PR that are being put out to try and get followers to the viewpoint of these people. And I'm just going to play this couple vids by Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is the biggest fuckwad on the, well, I shouldn't say that. He's the second biggest fuckwad after Andrew Tate. This dude has been dominated by authority his whole life and has lived in this very narrow existence where he can't survive without hundreds of thousands of other people being enslaved so that he can feed himself. And yet I want you to listen to what's being said here. Just keep in mind first that he's a psychologist or psychiatrist and this guy's a pig here. So these people are, all they've done their whole life is just followed orders. I just want you to listen to what he says here. I'm going to dismantle it after he's done.
Can't I just do whatever the hell I want, whenever the hell I want to do it, with whoever I want to do it with? And the answer is because everything goes to hell if you do that, including you. And you say, well, I don't believe in hell. And I say, well, keep acting the way you are and you will. Now, everyone with an ounce of sense, an iota of sense, and this is actually what defines sense, knows perfectly well if they only do exactly what they want to do in accordance with the whim of the moment, which then becomes their God, right? Because if you're motivated by the whim of the moment and you place that above all else, that is now your God. Well, what's the God? Well, in this case, let's say it's sexual motivation. Well, if sexual motivation is your God, you will end up in something indistinguishable from hell. You will misuse other people. You will make them objects of your own narrow and immediate desire, and you'll have no relationships. You'll exploit everyone, including yourself.
I have to tell you, man, Jordan Peterson is one of the most brilliant people that I've ever heard, and I think he was right on point. So shout out to Jordan Peterson. That's a good video.
Okay, so now let me just break this down for you. Okay, that sounds all great, right? That you can't just do whatever you want because shit is going to go to hell. Okay, well, what if all I want to do, what if my wants and desires are just catering to my garden, swimming in the creek behind my house, and spending time with my family and friends? What if that is all that I desire? So what they're leading people to believe here with this fucking nonsense gibberish of these orders, these people, you got to understand, these people have done nothing their whole life but been dominated by people telling them how they have to live their life. And what they're going to do is, because they don't want or want to perceive any type of personal freedom, they want to give you the illusion that your own desire, that you can't just do what you desire because you're some sort of evil person. And that if we just let people do what they want, then everything goes to shit. But the problem, number one, what they're not telling you, but the pig and the shrink, is that we still have all those problems right now. There's still sexual deviants, there's still rapists, there's still murderers, there's still serial killers. All that shit still goes on right now. So what he's doing here is such a fucking disgrace. Like, basically he has evil thoughts and evil sexual desires, and that means that I need to be enslaved. And see, this is the type of mentality that these pig fucking scum and these shrinks want to push on the population. Like, and it just goes back to the other video I posted too about the psychological, about the shrinks. Like, you got to understand, back during slavery, these shrinks, these type of scum here, made up this thing. It was a mental illness called drapetomania. And what drapetomania was, that was the mental illness that caused slaves to want to run away to freedom. So that's what the slaves that wanted to run away to freedom were diagnosed with drapetomania by fucking scumbags like this guy here, right here. And see, like, I hate this guy more than anything. There's a few other ones like him that I really can't stand because they're such frauds. And so basically, he wants, because him and Officer Scumbags wants to have like evil thoughts and desires and need to be dominated into being good people, he wants to enslave the rest of society along with them. So I gotta pay property tax and income tax and do all these little tasks that authority figures want us to do because this guy can't control his own sexual desires. Like, when I saw this, I was just so disgusted. Like, yeah, I need to follow the order of strangers so all I want to do is swim in the creek behind my house, ride my bike, tend to my garden and livestock, and spend time with my family and friends. Now, I think that's a pretty fulfilling life. I mean, I don't see any evil coming out of that, but because this guy wants to be a sexual deviant and can't control his own thoughts and desires, that now we all have to be dominated by scumbag fuckwads like this fucking idiot here. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is scum of the earth, pig trash, the popo, and pretty much every other government employee, but I'm going to just stick with the pigs right now. The most important thing that needs to be understood is that anybody that thinks that they are like a freedom lover and worships the founding fathers and the Constitution, you should be the most anti-pig people that there is. And I know a lot of yous are, which is a good thing, but there's other people that believe that the current pig force that we have that's unleashed on the population right now is the standing army that we are not supposed to have as the Constitution blatantly says. So just understand that if you like the Constitutions or any of the founding father gibberish that you were taught as a kid, the pigs should be your biggest enemy in life. I'm going to try and explain this to you so people can understand. The pigs were never here for a means to protect the average citizen from crime. What the pig forces have been started for is to protect the political, the justice, and the corporation class. That's their purpose here. And it has any law fighting that they do in the side is totally secondary to protecting their masters and who pays their salary. What the most important thing that people need to take away is that you were never not supposed to be responsible for your family and your own and your direct neighbors' protection. You were never supposed to off-put that to some government institution. And that's one of the things that really, really has gone way off with our society, is that there's so many cowardice people that are so scared of having to protect themselves and their families from the dangers in life that they've given up all their freedom and their ability to do that to pig scum of the earth. And they're really at this point of the game, the pigs are so out of control. If you don't understand that, then either you're as stupid as a pig, or you're related to a pig, or your eyes are purposely closed to what's going on. If you just look through the internet at the pig corruption that is going on right now, and the overuse of force, and none of that was ever part of the founding fathers' plan for this country. So just please understand that there was never supposed to be a standing army of pigs that can be turned against the population by politicians at their whim. And that's exactly what we have now. And it's so absurd. And what happens is that what people don't understand is that you were never not supposed to be responsible for your own protection and your family's own protection. That was always supposed to be your responsibility as a freedom-loving human. So, but what's happened is that so much, number one, people don't grasp this, but having all these police and these laws and these jails actually just creates more crime. Because what happens is that beings that people aren't allowed to defend themselves from criminals, the criminals know that they can get away with a lot more than they could if they had to worry about every person they tried to try and take advantage of was an armed person that was ready to kill them on sight if they tried to infringe at all on any of their freedoms or properties. If the criminals, that's what people don't understand. Like, people think that the reason we have so much crime is because of the pigs. They are the reason, and that the population is restrained in so many different ways from handling their own protection. And what happens is once you give your ability to protect yourself away to appointed authority figures, those appointed authority figures are always going to be the people who enslave you. And I mean, there's no way around it. If you think that police are necessary, then you don't understand what dangerous freedom is. It's your responsibility to protect yourself, your family, and your community. And once that was taken out of the hands of the population and put into the hands of an institutional government institution, you were pretty much doomed at that point, because it allows criminals to run rampant with small penalties. So you'll get career criminals, they'll rob people 20, 30, 40, 50 times. Whereas in a freedom-loving society, they would have been killed after the first or second time. So it's just what people need to understand is that the pigs are the reason that we have so much crime. If we didn't have pigs and the population itself was allowed to handle criminals how they see fit, you would have 1/100th of the crime that we have now. This system that we're living in creates Kensington, Philadelphia. It creates crime. It's the reason that there's so many prisons. It's the reason that there's a prison industrial complex. The pigs need to go. And you're not going to have any sort of improvement until the pigs are put in check, because they're the ones they're the force that are holding this tyranny in place at this point. And they love that extortion money, and they love that you can't handle criminals on your own, because it's job security for them people. And that's just the one thing, the one takeaway you need to get from this is that once you give your freedom to protect yourself and your family, once you pass that off to some government institution, that's it. You're done for at that point. Those are the same exact people that will dominate and enslave you until you stop them and take your freedom back from them. So that's one thing I wanted to say about the pig trash. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is Fucker Carlson. And not just him, but something I've noticed over the years since making these videos. I don't know if it's a coincidence. I don't think it is a coincidence. I think what they're doing is there's intelligence and think tanks that have all sorts, they scour the internet basically for content. And there's probably people that are flagged and they get their content looked at by intelligence and think tanks and stuff like that. But what I've noticed is that there's been at least 5 times where I've made a video about a specific topic. And then within 1 week, I see like a huge push to try and propagandize people against that topic. And the first, just to explain where I'm coming from, I made a vid a couple months back calling out Tucker Carlson. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you think Tucker Carlson is on your side, if you think Tucker Carlson or RFK Jr. is on your side, you're being taken for the ride of your life. These people are controlled opposition, and one way you can tell when, in Tucker's case especially, is that they go to the same trick every single time. So I made this vid calling Tucker about working at Fox, and he pretends that he's not part of the show, but he's on one of the fully controlled broadcast things, and he's still fully controlled. He is a snake in wolf's clothing, is what I like to call him. But what they did is, so I made this vid calling Tucker out and saying he's bullshit and he's full of shit and he's controlled opposition, this, that, and the other thing. Well, within 2 weeks of me making that vid about him, they started off with he's leaving Fox News. And I thought that was interesting because it was kind of relevant to what I was talking about in my vid, about his bosses being in on the scam. So I thought that was interesting, and I kept an eye on it. But then what they did next, and this is the key, this is how you know they used it with Trump too, and this is how you know that they're trying to sell somebody to a certain demographic with a certain ideology. And what they did with Tucker is that they had him come out and start questioning 9/11 and what went on 9/11. And whenever you see one of these people do that, one of these mainstream people start doing that, understand you're being trumped. It's the Trump scam. It's a way for them to sell somebody to a demographic that previously would not have given them the time of day. So I was very suspicious about the Tucker thing. And then when I saw him go on Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, they had a vid with an interview with him on it. And then I seen him, like, he's being put forth. He's being put forth as if he's not part of the establishment. And he's fully part of the establishment. And what I think they're going to do with him is they're going to use him to, give the illusion in this next election that the population has won something. I think that's where this is going. I'll be real interested to see where it ends up and who ends up winning. But I really think that what they're going to do with this next selection is they're going to try and give the population the illusion that there's some sort of change occurring. And he's going to be a key role in that, even though there won't be any sort of meaningful change at all. And I just wanted to say that. And it's happened to me a couple other times too. Like I made this vid, the spell of servitude vid right here, about the idiots worshiping a flag, saying a spell to a flag. And within a week after me making that video, I seen huge efforts in people trying to push waving the flag. That one fake rapper that they have that always does all the social engineering raps that gets a lot of views. Like a week after I made that vid, he came out with the flag, with the worshiping the flag song. It's a whole song about it's cool to worship the flag, and it's such gibberish. And I can only think that they do stuff like that when they see a push from the other direction. And it's happened a couple other times, and I truly believe that there is think tanks and intelligence that scour there's probably certain channels that are flagged, and they try and counter any narrative that is put out that goes against their fantasy reality that they want these sheep, Pledge Allegiance sheep, to fall into. Because I've noticed that a bunch of times where I've put out content and then within a week there's mainstream, or I shouldn't even say mainstream, but like fake alternative media basically countering exactly what I was talking about in my vid, and it just seems too coincidental to me. But it could be a coincidence. I'm willing to admit it could be, but I don't think that it is. I think that there's think tanks and intelligence scouring flag sites or flag channels that post content like this, and then whenever they see something that ruffles their feathers, they make sure that there's propaganda that gets put out to counter it. And so that's all I wanted to say about Tucker. Just if you think Tucker is on your side, I would be very, very, very cautious as to trusting anybody that was once part of the show and is now pretending that they ain't part of the show. And that's him. And it also goes for Trump too. Like all these court trials, these people are being radicalized by the people on either side of the fake line that have taken these very narrow views and like worship these politicians. They're being taken for a ride by people that know how to manipulate their emotions. And it's like, how much money have we spent investigating these people? It's truly disgraceful. People are so mind controlled at this point. I have a hard time having much respect for the American middle class. And even not just the middle class, but I feel like they're the largest group that's the problem. And the ones that are so willing to be these people's button pushers that they'll just go along with any bullshit that somebody feeds them. So that's all I wanted to say about that with fucker Carlson. Okay, I want to wrap this up real quick. The last thing I want to kind of touch on is why I will always stand against this system. 100%. I will participate in it as much as I have to, but it will always be my biggest enemy. I'm as anti this system as anybody could be. And I'm going to explain why. 90% of the wealth in this society is been in the hands of the same families for hundreds of years. And all that wealth is, it's just an imaginary construct that they've been able to con people to enforce on the rest of the population. Like they've made these laws and banking laws and corporate law and all this stuff to try and force other people to respect and uphold the wealth that these few families have had for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I'm not talking about, it's so funny because like I know there's people in my life that make $100,000 a year and they think that they're rich. And they can barely get by themselves, but because they make $100,000 and they can have a little bit of luxury, they believe that like they're part of the big boys club. But it just shows how delusional some people are. But what they don't realize is they are closer. They are about so much closer to the poorest homeless man than they are to the wealthiest people in the world. And the problem with that is that these people that have all this wealth, they dictate. The society allows them to dictate what has value. And that's how we end up with this Hollywood stars having value and sports stars having value and these TikTok chicks that just shake their booty on the internet having value. What people need to understand is that the only reason that these people have any value at all is because somebody else that's very, very, very wealthy and wants to create people of more and more dependence have decided that that's where value needs to be because it's better for them. So what you end up having now is instead of girls wanting to like make something of themselves and be intelligent people, now they can just go show their ass in workout clothes on TikTok. And that's been given value, but there's really no value in that at all. Zero. Nothing in society needs. It's all fake entertainment value that it doesn't really exist. It wouldn't exist unless there was authority placing value on it from above. So that's the main reason I will never support this system, because value is being dictated by the people that enslave you. And that's the biggest reason I will never support this system, is because, I mean, honestly, if there was any sort of real value and real, what's the word I'm looking for? Real value to any of this stuff, they would be giving value to people that want to be homesteading. They would instead of giving money and resources to people that want to use the least amount of resources, they're giving money and wealth to the people that want to use the most amount of resources. And that is my biggest problem with this whole system. So they want to drag people as far away from everything good that's there, and they want them to be sports. They want them to catch a ball for a living. And the whole societies have deluded themselves. I mean, there's people that worship these sports people for catching a ball. And I mean, the whole thing's so absurd, and that's why I won't ever have any parts of it. And I will try everything I can till the day I die to try and get this system to collapse in on itself and people to learn how to take care of themselves. And that's all I want to say. I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.